what advice would you give to someone who hasn't started their walk in equitable leadership or on their equitable journey to actually just be a part? Because, you know, we have to be together. Like, there's power in unity, there's power in numbers. So what would you advise anybody to do as far as creating a more equitable future for our students now?
Sure.
What would you say?
Creating a more equitable future for our students now, like I said, equity starts with identifying the barriers. And so I think you can't do that without information. I think it's important to examine the histories of whichever group you're talking about. And so in the case of our students, looking at the histories of what education and what opportunities look like for students from different backgrounds and really examining what those things are. Starting there, starting with relationships with folks who are different.
Hey guys, we are back with another episode of the Future Starts Here podcast. And today I am so excited because the guest for today is an amazing and empowering woman. She is also one of Buffalo Business First Women of Influence of the Year awardees, and that is Chantele Campbell. She is the Chief Health Equity Officer at Best Self. Chantele, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to interview you today. I think from the first time that I met you and actually engineering the podcast that you did, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, like, you just are so inspiring. And I thought, I was like, we got to get her on here.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chantele was also one of the newest members on the Say Yes board. So we definitely want to get you in here because it's important to have someone like you who is new on the board, but also to understand your background and kind of like how you align with the board as well. So being as though this is the Say Yes podcast, you know, I did my research. So I seen that you went to City Honors High School.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me, what was your favorite part about attending a Buffalo public school?
So I attended Buffalo Public School all the way from the beginning, pre-K through senior year of high school. I was an Olmsted kid and then a City Honors kid. And I think my favorite part would really be the diversity of it all. Both in Olmsted and City Honors. It was folks from all backgrounds of life. I thought that was really beautiful. And in both schools, they gave us some really great opportunities outside of the academic rigor. It was opportunities to explore other areas of interest. So that was great too.
Okay, I will say, not gonna be biased. I went to Hush Tech.
Oh, Lord.
I went to Hush Tech, where both schools are just as great. But I think at City Honors and Olmsted, like those schools, you get a different perspective of things. Like you said, it's a lot of diversity there.
Yes.
So we're just gonna move forward, going into continuing with just the aspect of Say Yes. The college point, you went to Canisius. That's what I read about. You went to Canisius. Was that kind of like the same for you as far as City Honors, or was it different for you going into Canisius?
It was very different. So I found my way to Canisius by way of the McGowan Scholarship. That's what it was called then. Now the Urban Learning Community. Actually, our current superintendent of BPS, Dr. Tanya Williams-Knight, she presented us with the opportunity to apply for this scholarship at Canisius College, then now Canisius University. And the scholarship was intended for minority youth in the city, with the intention of keeping leadership and keeping talent here locally. And very excited to be in this cohort of other Black and brown faces at Canisius. And when we got there, it was very different from my high school experience. You know, like I said, high school was super diverse, people from all backgrounds. And when I got to Canisius at the time, finding myself with white folks who had never been around Black people before. And so that was challenging to kind of adjust to this predominantly white institution when I was used to going to school with so many different folks.
Okay. So I'm happy that you talked about the scholarship that you were presented with and being a part of that cohort. Talk a little bit about the opportunities that it brought you, kind of like what the Say Yes Scholarship has brought to so many scholars recently. Talk about like the opportunities that it gave you being able to, get that scholarship.
I would say the biggest opportunity with that scholarship was exposing me to what was possible. I'll never forget, actually, Miss Tanya at Say Yes. My first couple of weeks in the program, they did a speaker series with professional folks from the community, professional Black men and women in the community to come in and talk about their careers. And she was one of the people. I think she was working down at City Hall at the time. And I was just so amazed by this powerful Black woman. And so now I think that fast forward, I'm in that age demographic now, 20 years later, over 20 years later, Lord. But yeah, to see the idea of what was possible in other Black men and women, that was incredible for me.
So you got like the representation that you were able to see. Like,
absolutely. Through that scholarship experience in particular, for sure.
I think exposure is definitely important, especially for Black and brown, students. Like it's important to see other people who have went through what we went through and has made it to a certain point where it's like, it shows us that it's feasible to get there.
Yeah.
So even just talking about that, is that where you kind of discovered that you wanted to go into like the equity spectrum of the work that you do now? I know you were formerly the
Chief Diversity Officer?
Yes, at City Hall. Sorry, yes.
That's okay. So, it's interesting because I didn't really have the language for equity or health equity until very recently in my career. I would say the last handful of years or so. Initially at Canisius, I started out as a management and marketing major. And I had intentions of being in business. And I took a trip to West Africa my freshman year of college, and it completely changed my life. I don't remember if it was the semester after or, sometime shortly after that trip. I changed my major after taking an elective, and I decided to go the psychology route. And I minored in child family community studies. And so that's how that kind of all connected. And I started working in various human services capacities, case management work, working in mental health, in education. And so through the process of those career opportunities and just seeing the disparities that exist across different demographics, that kind of ignited my passion and interest for equity and inclusion work.
Okay, so being as though you went through all those different job titles and got to experience a lot of different things, I don't know if you could sum it up in one sentence. You probably can't. What does equity look like to you, or what does it mean to you?
I can define that, and I think that's been a working definition for me over time. But the most simple way for me to define equity is really identifying and eliminating barriers for full participation. And so whether that's full participation in society, full participation in the workplace, full participation or access in healthcare, which is the work that I do now. So that's equity, examining things and looking at the histories and figuring out what's getting in the way and making sure we do what we need to do to eliminate that through policy and practice.
So what's your favorite part about your current role right now at Best Self?
My favorite part, it's so hard because I love the work that I do. I love my colleagues. It's an amazing team. I'm really excited about my work with the Black Mental Health Response Team.
I'm familiar with them. I see them a lot out at tabling opportunities and things of that nature, and I think it's a really good program.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite part. It wasn't an initiative that I started, but I had the privilege to support that team. And I love that we get to eliminate stigma in the Black community as it relates to mental well-being. I think it's so important. So we get to figure out creative ways to have these conversations. So that's exciting to me.
Yes, I love that. I wish we could do it in all communities, but the communities that we're in right now, I think it's definitely making a staple and making an impact in the communities. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and I haven't obviously had the time to go myself, but a lot of people have talked about it, and it's been really beneficial to just allow them to get them that safe space to just talk about like the things they're experiencing, even if it's not related to the things that we've all, you know, dealt with during this time, but definitely like even in their own personal lives, like just getting that out to talk to somebody where you don't have to pay. And it's
that's
like,
the part.
Exactly.
Yeah, we want to make it accessible and free. We want to make it relatable. Right now, our focus is on youth and their families. And so it's exciting to me to know that young people are having conversations about mental well-being.
Exactly. Yeah. It's important because young people go through things too. And sometimes they don't have that outlet, but you guys are providing that. And I think that is amazing. So especially with you coming onto the Say Yes board now, how do you think your work aligns with your role on the board now? Like, what are you most excited for?
So ultimately, you know, whatever board you're on, board service is about using your professional networks, your professional experience, your expertise, most importantly, the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what really excites me. I've been following the Say Yes journey from the very beginning. I've been a fan of the work of Say Yes. And so to be invited to be a part of this work is an incredible honor for me. Obviously super passionate about it. And the work of Say Yes is equity work. And so to be able to serve on a board that has equity, that has racial equity at the heart of its mission, you know, it doesn't get any better.
I truly, truly believe that like you are a perfect fit for the board as well. Like it's important to have like a woman of like your stature, your status.
Thank you.
Like for sure to be on the board because you've done this work and you actually believe in it like in your role, but also outside of it. Like it's more than just a job to you. And even with like you have your own podcast, the C-Suite Mama, that focuses on like, you know, empowering women and mothers just in the C-suite roles.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the C-Suite Mama, it's both a community and a podcast. And this came out of me trying to create a space that I actually needed for myself as I was kind of journeying through my leadership and my career path. Yeah. At the time, you know, earlier in my career, I was a single mom, kind of making my way through leadership. But in addition to being a single mom, I was the first person in my family to kind of climb the career ladder in that sense. And I didn't have the blueprint. I'm like, I don't know how you do this as a mom, as a single mom, you know, trying to be out here dating at the time. Thankfully, that's over. But I didn't know how to navigate that space. And so I created the opportunity myself to provide space for folks who are in that same, for women, for mothers who are in the same space, who want mentors and guidance and advice.
Yeah, I think the point that you make about mentorship is extremely important. Like it's always good to have somebody who advocates for you. And like I said before, who really understands like where you are right now because they've been there, they've taken those steps to get to where they need to be, but you may be struggling in that time. And I will say, I mean, aside from like, you know, I'm not a mother, but I'm 25 right now, and I am the first person in my family to make those jumps up the ladder, and it does get a little frustrating because sometimes I just don't have the blueprint. I don't understand it. Whereas like not only the succession of like, you know, my roles, but also sometimes the rejections. Like how do you battle that? Where it's you've been getting everything and then you hear a no. Yeah. It's like, okay, like are you gonna stay where you're at or are you gonna keep climbing? It's like who do you go to if you're the first person in your family to understand that? So I think that is extremely important when it comes to just empowering women, because also, you know, who's going to support us the best besides us?
Right. We live in a very unique space, especially, you know, both the intersection of being a woman and a mother, like those dynamics are so unique. And so, you know, it's great to have male mentors. Dave is one of my mentors.
Love Dave.
I love Dave. But you need folks who have that same lived experience, and that's helpful.
You do. You need a village.
Yes.
For sure. So, also, like you mentioned, you are a mother, and then just working in this space. What does an equitable future look like to you as far as when it applies to our scholars and our students in this community?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not only am I a mom, I'm a mom of a Buffalo Public School student as well. My baby is a City Honors kid too. But my hope for all of our kids would be that they have opportunities to have a livable wage, I would hope here in this community, because if the brain drain continues, we won't have a workforce, but I hope that they can have a livable wage to have opportunities where they can grow and advance in their career, whatever that looks like. That they can live in a truly inclusive space with opportunities, regardless of what you look like. I think that's really important, both socially and opportunities for housing and just a good quality of life. That's my hope.
So what advice would you give to someone who hasn't started their walk in equitable leadership or on their equitable journey to actually just be a part? Because, we have to be together. Like, there's power in unity, there's power in numbers. So what would you advise anybody to do as far as creating a more equitable future for our students now?
Sure.
What would you say?
Creating a more equitable future for our students now, like I said, equity starts with identifying the barriers. And so I think you can't do that without information. I think it's important to examine the histories of whichever group you're talking about. And so in the case of our students, looking at the histories of what education and what opportunities look like for students from different backgrounds and really examining what those things are. Starting there, starting with relationships with folks who are different. I think that's important. Well,
you heard Chantelle. Make sure you know the information and also start relationships. Relationships are extremely important. I think more than anything else. Like, how do we trust you if we don't know you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I say history because I think people, the term DEI or, that concept has been used so flippantly. But I think when you genuinely have an interest in this work, to really understand the history of things, you can't ignore facts. And so to understand the histories of different groups and their experiences is super important to start in that conversation.
Exactly. And I'm happy that you mentioned DEI and then also REI as well. For the people who don't know those acronyms, can you let us know what they are?
So DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and REI, racial equity and inclusion.
So how do we move past the intimidation of those two terms? Because some people are intimidated by those words.
Like, meaning, how do I approach it when folks are intimidated? I don't tiptoe around it. It just is what it is. And I have to take up space when it comes to this work. It's liberation work to a degree. And so I don't really have time to be timid about it. We just have to do the work.
I love that. No tiptoeing.
You can't.
There's no way around it. You can't tiptoe.
There's no way around it. You just got to go through it.
You can't.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for this. I think that this was great. I would love to hear more. We might have to do a part 2, actually.
Okay.
So let us know where we can find you. Let us know where we can find your podcast and the community that you cultivate as well. So just tell us a little bit about where we can find you at.
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's always the best way. Chantele Campbell on LinkedIn. You can email me at bestself. It's ccampbell@bestself.org. For the C-Suite Mama, it's the C-Suite Mama podcast on all platforms, and we are streaming on Spotify and Apple Pod. We haven't recorded in a bit. We took a break over the summer, but we'll be back very soon. So check us out.
Make sure you guys tune into the C-Suite Mama podcast on all streaming platforms. You don't want to miss it. And if you don't know her, you should get to know her because we all know and love her. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't. So until next time, make sure you follow us at Say Yes Buffalo on all platforms or go to our website, sayesbuffalo.org. Until next time.